What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Own the Hunt, and welcome back to a new video. This is going to be a review video down here in the studio of my Thermion 2 Pro XQ50 LRF. So before we start this review, guys, I just want to give a quick shout out to Logan at Fall River Shooters. Logan hooked me up with this scope, definitely not for free, but he helped me out on this. And because of Logan, I'm able to bring this to the channel and review it and also make excellent content using this scope. Now, if you guys are in the market for a thermal scope of any kind, thermal monocular for scanning, Logan at Fall River Shooters is definitely where you want to go. He will answer the phone and he will talk to you. If you are hung up on a scope, and you just need some advice, Logan will talk you through that right on the phone. He's a super personable guy, really easy to talk to, but more importantly, he knows his stuff, guys. He knows everything about these scopes, from the nitty-gritty specs all the way to how they actually perform. He's used them, and that's what's most important. As soon as a new scope hits the market, Logan's got it in his hands and he's testing it. He's gathering footage from them so he can share that with people who might be on the fence. So Logan's your guy, Logan's my guy, and so I just want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Logan for helping bring this video to the channel, as well as more videos to come. I'm really excited for what's to come on the channel. I've got some excellent thermal optics I'm going to be reviewing here, both to help Logan out, but also to help myself out and help you all out. So guys, I hope you enjoy this video. Stay with me. I really like this scope, guys. I've had it for about a month now, excuse me, and I finally feel comfortable enough to give this thing a review. I didn't want to give it a review right off or even an early impressions video just because I wanted to have some time behind this scope. I wanted to have, you know, some footage to show you guys. I wanted to have some kills. I wanted to shoot it and see how it worked, see how it held zero. And I got to tell you guys, this thing is absolutely one of the best, hands down, thermal scopes you can buy. There are better, by all means, there are better. But this thing right here is absolutely one of the nicest. It is the nicest thermal scope I've looked through, and I gotta be honest, I've looked through some pretty high-end thermal scopes. I've used the Halo XRF by Envision. That image quality is better, but it's a 640 core. This is a 384 core. We'll get into all those specs in a little bit here, guys, but I'm gonna cover some pretty high-level things really quick. Cost. This scope is now $3,999. But when this first came out, which was only a few months ago, it was $42.99. So Pulsar has dropped their pricing dramatically, and I don't know why, but I have to wonder if it's to compete with some of the other thermal scopes in this category with similar feature sets. That's all I can think of. Some of those, like by AGM and Bearing Optics, some of those are at a much lower price point for similar specs. Now, Pulsar is pretty much top of the line, guys. This thing is fit and finish on this, and quality, build quality, user experience is really as good as it gets. Now, I'm gonna touch on all that stuff in a little bit, but just know that Pulsar really has it figured out, and I'm gonna leave it at that. I mean, Pulsar has got it figured out. That's the best way I can describe it. So, I've got this thing on my rifle. This is my 6.5 Grendel rifle by Specialized Dynamics. If you guys follow the channel, you know about this rifle already. Now, very pleased with this scope. I took it to the range, zeroed it, and have been hunting with it for about a month since. I've gone probably 10 times with this scope, and I haven't had a bad experience with it yet. It's done extremely well in humidity. Its clarity is very good. The battery life is very good, and I'm gonna touch on that as well. So really quick, guys, with the scope, anything Pulsar you buy, you get a nice box with it, Pulsar branding, and just a nice box. I always like to show that kind of stuff because when you spend that kind of money on something, you wanna know that you're getting premium. And from the time you pull this box out of the package, it screams premium. So inside the box, you get this really nice travel case. This is kind of like a hard but soft also case. Go ahead and open it up, and it's got nice compartments inside it for all of the things that comes with it. Now, as far as what comes with this scope, you get this dual bay charger. This will hold the APS-2 and the APS-3 Pulsar batteries. So the APS-2 battery on this, you're gonna get about 2 hours of runtime on just the APS-2 battery. And the APS-3, you're gonna get like 3.5 or so hours of runtime. So this could charge 2 APS-2s, 2 APS-3s, or one of each. So if you buy yourself an APS-3, you can charge your APS-2 that comes with this and the APS-3 all at the same time. Pretty cool little unit that they include with the scope. That's really about all they include with the scope. They do include a, notice mine's still wrapped. I don't like these guys, I never have, but they do include a eye cup that goes on the backside. It's kind of nice, so it fits on there magnetically, and it's on there pretty solid, and then you just pop it off. Nice eye cup. I just don't like them, guys. Like I said, just don't like them. Real quick, I'm just gonna touch on some of the specs so we can get into the nitty gritty on this thing. This is a 384 by 288 resolution, otherwise known as a 384 core in the thermal world. The frame rate is 50 hertz, and I am looking down at my laptop, guys. I'm on the Pulsar website just so I don't mix up any of these specs. I've been looking at a lot of devices lately and a lot of specs, and I just don't want to mix up any specs. So the pixel pitch on this is a 17 micron. Do your homework on that, guys, because there's also a 12 micron sensor out there, and there's a 17 micron. Those are the two that are really heavily utilized right now in the market. And here's what I have to say. I used to think a 12 micron sensor was better, and in some cases it is. But the 17 micron is actually doing a better job and giving you more clarity in your image. So take that for what it's worth. There's some videos out there that explain pixel pitch very well, and it's where I learned that 17 micron really is actually better. So I'm not gonna go into that, and I don't want any like arguments or anything out there from the people that think 12 is superior, but 17 is the way to go. This has a sub 25 millikelvin thermal sensor, NETD. So what does that mean? I know, like, you're like, what is sub 25 millikelvin? So the scope that this replaced had a sub 40 millikelvin sensor. And one of the biggest things they did on these pro models is they introduced their sub 25K or millikelvin sensor. So I gotta tell you, when I got this scope, I didn't expect it to be much better than my Trail 2 LRF, because spec-wise, they were pretty much identical. The only real difference that I was able to notice was the Trail 2 had the sub 40 millikelvin sensor. This has the sub 25K or millikelvin sensor, and it makes a huge difference. So I'm gonna explain the millikelvin sensor in the most basic terms that I can for the people that wanna know what does it really do. So what does it do? Well, it's the heat sensitivity of the scope. And so a sub 25 millikelvin sensor is much more sensitive than a sub 40 millikelvin sensor. And so therefore, it's able to distinguish heat differences much better. So let's say you have like a 2 or 3 degree difference in temperature, the better sensor is gonna be able to differentiate that difference in heat much better. So they like cut that in half with the scope, and it shows. I mean, this thing has a beautiful image for a 384 core, and I want to stress that throughout this video because I've looked through, so 640, and man, from 200 yards and in, it's really hard to tell a difference. So keep that in mind. So going forward, the display resolution in back here, it's a 1024 by 768 AMOLED display. It looks really nice, very crisp back here, what you're looking at. The objective lens is a 50mm lens with a 1.0 aperture. The magnification on this, the base mag is 3 power, and it goes up to 12 power. So Pulsar is claiming a detection range of 1900 yards on this. I would say that is absolutely accurate. This thing, there has been nothing I haven't been able to detect for heat yet in any of the fields that I am hunting in. So detection range, superb on this unit. Now, the inside of this scope, this is a really cool feature about these Thermions. The inside of the scope has an internal battery, and you're gonna get like probably 6 hours out of that internal battery, okay? So keep that in mind, because up here, the scope has the APS-2 that comes with the scope, and this nice hard plastic, well-built cap that basically closes it all in, and it is watertight. So that battery can only go in one way. Goes in, cap goes on. It's a quarter twist to lock it in. So that battery life isn't amazing. So I'm only seeing, based on my use, I'm only getting about 2 hours of life out of that battery. So that's continuous runtime. That's without the Wi-Fi running on this scope. So my phone isn't paired to or anything. If you turn the Wi-Fi on, you're gonna get a little less battery life out of that APS-2. Now, when the internal battery kicks in, you're gonna get an additional 6 hours. So with the APS-2, you're gonna get about 2 hours. With the internal battery, you're gonna get 6 for a combined runtime of about 8 hours. Now, if you move up to the APS-3 and you use the APS-3 up here, it is a longer battery, and so Pulsar includes a longer cap with that. It's right here in this bag. I haven't really opened it because I don't have an APS-3 battery, and I don't really plan to get one. I feel like 8 hours of runtime between internal and the APS-2 is really plenty. Now, if you do buy an APS-3 battery, you can see the difference there. You do need the extended scope cap mount, and it goes right on. No problems at all. It's a little taller, but it's pretty close to flush with the top of this laser rangefinder. We'll talk about the laser rangefinder in just a minute, guys. So APS-2, like I said, 2 hours of runtime. Doesn't sound great, but when you couple it with the 6 hours you get internally, it's really pretty much fine. You're only gonna get about maybe 2 hours more with an APS-3, so for possibly 10 hours of runtime or so. So the body of this unit is made out of a magnesium alloy. Like most of Pulsar's units, this is really where they shine. From every single aspect of the scope, it just screams and feels premium. The button clicks are premium, the housing, the way it feels, the machining, premium, the scope cap, premium, the twist knobs for your focus, just everything feels premium. And I'm gonna stress that throughout this whole video because this truly is a premium scope. So that kind of gets the specs out of the way. The only last spec I want to talk about is this scope is rather heavy, weighing in at 31.7 ounces. It's kind of hefty. You definitely feel it on the scope, on the rifle rather, but most thermal scopes are heavy, with the exception of like maybe the AGM varmint line or even their Rattler line. Those are pretty lightweight scopes, pretty compact. So if size and weight is something of consideration to you, this is definitely on the bigger and heavier side, so keep that in mind. Now, one thing I'm gonna get out of the way really quick, guys, that kind of bothered me when I bought this scope, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little irritated. This is the first Thermion scope I bought. My Pulsar Trail came with a scope mount underneath it. It was nothing super fancy or crazy, but it had a mount and I could put it on the rifle and go. This scope and none of the Thermion scopes from Pulsar come with a scope mount. And I feel like that's a major miss from Pulsar's part, and I'll tell you why. AGM and I believe Bearing include scope mounts with their scopes. Now I know AGM includes not just a basic scope mount. They partnered with ADM, American Defense Manufacturing, for a high quality quick disconnect mount for all of their thermal scope options. So why Pulsar isn't doing that, I'm not really sure. It's not a major deal. But in the grand scheme of things, you're spending over $4,000 on a thermal scope, and I really feel like it should come with a mount. Now, I understand that from a logistics standpoint of, are you putting this on an AR platform with a rail on top, or are you putting it on a bolt gun that maybe doesn't have a rail on top, or maybe has a little small section of rail in 2 spots. So they don't want to supply you with a cantilever single piece mount like this, but they also don't want to supply you with 2 individual scope rings, so they just give you nothing. And so I understand that, but I feel like there's a way around it. And knowing Pulsar, I think they're gonna have to start doing something like that to stay in the game. I mean, it was a big bummer to me when I bought the scope and it had no rings, and I had to figure that out before I could even use the scope on my rifle. With that said, guys, the scope does have a 30mm tube, main tube. It'll work with pretty much any standard scope mount rings that are 30mm. You can use a cantilever one piece like this. You could use 2 individual scope rings like I mentioned before, and that will work fine. So I'm gonna kind of move from the back to the front on this scope as far as features go. On the back, you've got your diopter focus ring here. It works really well. It's a little tight, a little stiff, but that's fine. That means it's gonna stay in place, which I really like that. I've had no issues in the field with this, moving or getting out of whack. So it stays where you need it. And this is not really an adjustment you need to be changing much at all. So I like that it stays in place, and I like that it's got some pretty good retention there. So no worries there, it works really well. So coming up here a little bit more, guys, you've got your main button layout, you've got your laser rangefinder button, you've got your record button, and you've got your zoom magnification button. All of those buttons work really nicely. They're laid out nicely. They're easy to use both with gloves or no gloves. And the button presses are really good and solid. Okay, so next thing, you got your main menu wheel. So this wheel turns, this turret, it spins both forward and back, very smooth. It's got some audible clicks that they're not really loud, but you can feel them for sure. And then in the middle of this, you got your main button for your menu. Now, one quick press of that button is gonna bring up your sub menu, which is just a small menu where you can change things like contrast, brightness, things like that. And then a long press of this button is gonna bring up your main menu with all of the functionality in this scope. And let me tell you, this thing is packed full of features as far as that goes. As I mentioned before, this top turret is your battery compartment for your external battery. Goes on nice watertight seal. On the back side of this scope, you've got another cap that's very similar to, I'm gonna turn this rifle around, that's very similar to the battery compartment cap, but it's covering your data output and your charging port. So this scope can work with an external charging source, like a battery pack of some sort. It can work with that, and it works really well. And then you can also just charge the internal battery that way as well, like off of a wall plug-in. Okay, so then moving forward even more, on top of the scope, Pulsar's decided to put their laser rangefinder unit on top, which I actually really like. And it just kind of streamlined the package a little bit more. Behind that is your main power button. So this button, if you press it and just press it one time, is gonna turn on your scope. To turn off your scope, you gotta press and hold it for about 4 seconds. And this scope does have a standby mode, which is actually really cool. So if you're out in the field or you're transporting or something, and you wanna keep your scope on so it stays good and warmed up, you can actually press and hold that for about 2 seconds, and it will put your scope into a standby mode where it shuts off your rear display, but the sensor keeps functioning. So then if you need to look through your scope really quickly, you just quickly tap that button, that power button, one time, it wakes your scope back up and you're in the business. Okay, now right here, there's a knob on both sides of this scope. Okay, it's in the exact same spot on both sides. That is your front focus ring, okay? So that is gonna dial in your image both for clarity, at certain yardages and things like that. That works the same on both sides. In fact, when you spin one side, it spins the other side. So it's a straight through dial. It works really nicely. Very firm, but also smooth, okay? So I don't really know how to describe that any better, but it's a smooth and firm focus ring, and it works extremely well. You can get on it with gloves, and I've had no issues or complaints with that focus ring. I really like it as opposed to the rings they used to have up front here on their older Thermion models. Okay, and so then kind of the last thing on the scope is the built-in scope cap that comes with it. I really like the scope cap, and I'm gonna give you 2 reasons why. Quickly, it's got a spring-loaded clip that holds it in. You pull that and it springs itself open. And then one thing I really, really like, and I'll show you guys this, is you can move this scope cap to either side of the scope that you need, okay? So it flips back, and then what I love is it flips perfectly back, nice and tight against the scope, and you don't have a scope cap that's, sticking out like this or, is way off the scope. And I really like that. I know like the Envision Halo, their scope cap, it doesn't flip all the way back and flush with the scope, and I just hate that. I feel like there's really kind of no reason for it to not flip back and stow nicely against the scope so that it can't catch on anything or anything like that. So guys, that's pretty much it on the scope itself. Now, just kind of my opinions on this. I thoroughly have enjoyed using this scope. Pulsar really knocked it out of the park with this one. The price point for performance is really perfect, especially now that they've dropped it down to $39.99. On their website, guys, it doesn't say $39.99. In fact, I think it says like $4,700. That's what they're kind of listing it as. But if you go to any reputable retailer or dealer of Pulsar, you're gonna get their lowest dealer pricing, and that's about $39.99. So yeah, I mean, just an awesome, awesome scope, guys. Been thoroughly happy with this. And hopefully, you know, if you guys are in the market for a thermal scope, hopefully you will check out Logan. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the videos, I did get this scope through Logan. He is my primary dealer. I run everything through Logan for as far as my thermal optic needs and even some other needs. So Logan's really, really knowledgeable, and he's helped me a lot as far as, you know, getting my hands on some thermal devices for testing and for reviewing on the channel to help you guys make decisions. And so, you know, he's my guy. I got to shout him out, and really, really happy to be partnered with Logan. And I really feel as though, you know, if anyone out there is considering a thermal unit of any kind, you know, Logan is your best possible place to go. He knows his stuff. He's going to get you in the exact unit you need for the exact money you're willing to spend or able to spend. And, you know, he even, on some of these units, he throws in some goodies. You know, you mentioned Own the Hunt, and he's got an Own the Hunt package for several thermal units. So just a really cool guy, and I can't stress that enough, guys. If you're in the market for a thermal scope, talk to Logan at Fall River Shooters. His phone number's out there. If you guys want to call him, you can get his phone number right off his Facebook page, Fall River Shooters. And he does have a website, fallrivershooters.com. His inventory isn't always up to date on the website, so your best bet is to talk to Logan directly. All right, guys, so that pretty much sums this scope up. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. Really, really happy with the scope. If you guys have any questions at all on this thermal scope or even any other thermal scopes, give me a shout. Put your comments, questions down in the comment section below. I'm more than happy to help you guys out. This is really a passion of mine, and so if I can help you guys answer one question, or if you're hung up on 2 different scopes, or even a thermal monocular for scanning, you know, let me know. I'm more than happy to help you guys possibly make that decision. But anyway, guys, until next time on the Hunt, I'll see you later.